What's up, team? This is part 32 of my awesomeification / restoration of my 1988 Ski Supreme. In this video, I will be showing all the work that went into the restoration of a swim deck that had not been oiled or maintained for 12 plus years. I also mount new removable swim brackets. Why? This is why. For 4 years, the garage hit the tongue of the trailer every time it went up or down. By making the swim deck removable, I will be able to park the boat in the garage with room to spare. Unlike the other videos where I show all the work as I do it, here I have clipped together only the work on the swim deck so it could stand alone as its own project. The work spans over 2 months, bringing us up to the last coat of oil that I just put on the swim deck 2 days ago. I'm showing all the work I did to restore, refurbish, and remount my swim deck. Originally, I wanted to make the swim deck foldable, just like a bike rack on the back of your truck, but it was going to take too much time and I just needed to get this project done, so I opted to go with the removable swim deck option. I've sped my pull-out procedure up to double speed here. I usually pull the boat about halfway up, put the swim deck on, put the pins in, and then I'm off to the lake. And we're ready for travel. Before we get into the work itself, here are some of the details that make this swim deck project awesome, as well as challenging. My old swim deck had the full-size mount here with 2 screws going through here and 1 here, and then this L bracket here used to go right here. Now, I patched and filled those holes, and then I gel coated over all my fiberglassing, and then I want to do something cool, so I got some red sparkle paint and I actually blew it on, and I'll show that in another video, onto the wet paint, and then I clear coated over it with some of that rubber spray. Gives this like tail light look to the boat that I thought was really, really cool. They really came out fantastic. You can't tell that a lot of work was done there, and it kind of gives it this cool look that maybe someone driving down the highway is like, man, that guy's got tail lights on the back of his boat. In addition to the full-size mounting brackets, I opted to do 2 L brackets on each side. It's going to give the swim deck more stability. I put some C-deck on top of the L bracket. You can see here. Here's my other L bracket, C-deck on top. I needed to add some notches right here to get out around my tow hooks. So I notched this in with a router right here. And I notched this side with the router right here. You can see I chipped it just a little bit as I was routering. No big deal, you really can't notice. And it slides on and off, no problem with those notches. The first 2 days of work on the swim deck have already been shown in previous videos, part 29 and 31. However, it's only about a minute worth of footage, so I figured I'd just leave it in this video. The first thing that I did was to remount the old swim deck brackets so that I could match the new brackets to the old mounting position. Once I had it mounted, I realized that the new brackets would not be a simple fit and that some custom fabrication was going to be needed. Why was I going to need custom modification? Well, let's get under and take a look. I did not want to remount on the outside of the boat because this hole right here was going underneath the floor of the boat. The option that Tanis suggested is to dig a well into the floor of the boat so that that water from the screw potentially drains into the well and then drains into the middle of the boat. Instead of cutting wells into the floor of the boat, I decided to make the existing well of the boat wider by cutting the floor in the back of the boat up to the sides of the stringers. This left me with an exceptionally narrow mounting platform for the swim deck itself to sit on the back of the boat. To compensate for this, I used the brackets on the opposite side they were intended for. These brackets originally were designed to sit on the outside here and here. I decided to invert them, go with a narrower mounting platform, and with all the reinforcement I did right here, I felt like I had good structural integrity through here, and then by adding the little L bracket here and here, I gained the structural integrity I need for the outsides. It's worked out great. This thing stands super solid. If I had just mounted the brackets like this and put the swim deck flat on top, the swim deck would have been pitched up like that. So I needed to measure this angle right here. This is the full width of the board, and it tapers to a thin width here, and I need to measure this dimension from under the boat, and this side and this side are 2 different measurements, and it really boggled my mind and really confused me for a long time, and it took a lot of effort and work to figure out what these measurements were to make these cuts in this board. But for these first couple mornings, I'm just out there trying to figure out what I'm looking at and how I'm gonna make this work. Before I was convinced that I needed custom fabrication, however, I verified and checked that my new mounting brackets were indeed symmetrical and the same, because as I put them up there, I saw that one had a little bit different of a mounting position than the other, and being that I was seeing everything for the first time, I just went through and checked and made sure that my brackets were the same. I came to two conclusions while staring at the swim deck. One, the swim brackets were going to have to go on in a duck-footed position. You get a good view when I hold the camera like this of the duck-footed nature of it, giving me a duck-footed mounting bracket. And two, I was going to need to repair the crack that was in the swim deck before I could make proper measurements. Here's a good view of the crack that was in the swim deck. You also get a good view of the brace that will be used to repair the crack. This is because the swim deck was originally mounted with the full supports on the outsides, the two little L brackets in the middle, so it was bowing in the middle. I used a liberal amount of wood glue between the brace and the swim deck before clamping it into place. I piloted all of my holes with a drill bit, then tapped the holes with a beveled bit before anchoring with stainless screws. Clamped it all together and it came out super solid, super sturdy, and is really holding together well. This is where I seal up the entire crack around the brace with wood glue to make sure I get a nice solid bead. Lastly, clean up with water and then off to bed. With my swim deck repaired, I am now able to make reliable measurements. I find that the left and right will not be the same cut to keep the swim deck at this position. This discrepancy will cost me an hour on cut day. I pre-cut these mount blocks back in the spring, probably on an afternoon where I had 45 minutes to kill before needing to pick up the boys. This close-up is me marking the measurement that will later be the cut. I borrowed my neighbor's table saw because it was the only tool I could get for free that had any chance of making this cut. If you've ever used a table saw before, you know that what I'm doing here is extremely dangerous and not what the tool was designed for. But I like to get creative, and it worked. I hot glued the brace to a 2x4 with a shim creating the angle. It works perfectly on the first brace. On the second brace, I missed the angle on the first try and have to do 4 trim cuts after that. Super annoying. This is the first cut of the second brace. And this is the wasted hour that I talked about earlier. Might have been more like 2 hours. After 4 attempts, I finally get the angle I'm looking for, and now I can mount it and test it. With both braces cut, I can now halfway screw in each brace to the swim deck so that I can get a much better look at how good my angles are and how close I am with these cuts. Feeling confident with my cuts and the mount, I drill my first holes into the back of the boat. Drilling holes at the waterline of a boat is a whole new experience for me. It was nerve-wracking and I did not like it, not one little bit. This is the moment that I realize the tow hooks will obstruct the swim deck from being able to slide on and off with these current brackets. I tell Amanda about the problem and decide that I'm cutting notches in them. It's definitely a snap decision, but it's the right thing to do, and I need to get it done. On day 122, I removed the brackets from the swim deck so I can mount the brace properly with glue and screws. I taped off between the cracks so the wood glue wouldn't seep through and create stains for later. I wanted this thing to look tight. I pre-drilled and tapped each screw hole and was very careful not to screw all the way through the top of the swim deck. I filled each hole with waterproof wood glue before hand tightening. I repeat the procedure for the second brace, but opt to not install the bracket because I want to oil the brace first, something I missed the opportunity to do on the first brace. I finished by filling any old holes or cracks in the swim deck with glue, hopefully preventing any potential rot risk in the future. Day 123 and some of the neighborhood girls came over with a mobile lemonade stand. This may have been the best moment in the project. Then I remove the masking tape and get to sanding the swim deck. Here I use my little Fordham tool to grind down the heads of any screws that have poked through over the years. I began sanding with 40 grit paper, then moved to 60 grit paper, then moved to an 80 grit hand sander. After the heavy sanding was done, I got the pressure washer out and blasted the thing as hard as I could. I wanted to get any and all dust or hairy wood out of the pores before wet sanding with 400 grit paper. Did I need to go this far? Probably not, but if you're gonna do something, you might as well do it to the max, and it turned out to be totally worth it. More wet sanding followed by more pressure washing, then taking it over to the sunny side of the house to dry. Day 124 and the swim deck is dry, and I can apply oil to the teak where the brace will sit. With that done, I get to work on the back of the boat. I remount the old swim brackets using the top two holes that will eventually hold my small L brackets so that I can take my time to finish drilling the rest of the holes for the bracket mounts. With the swim deck being held in position by the old mounting brackets, I'm able to measure where the notches will need to be cut around the tow hooks. Then I cut the notches with a router. Now that I have the notches, I could lift the swim deck up and down on the brackets, making sure they're square to each other and actually functional. At this point, I was confident in my bracket holes and removed the old swim brackets. I did a ton of guess and check work here. I kept mounting it and remounting and making sure it was square, that the bracket would slide up and down on the mounts, and it was worth every minute. Some touch-up routering on the notches. This is the last little bit of boring of one of the holes I needed to do to make it square and make it work. Here I am rounding off the sharp edges of the old L brackets that I'm going to reuse for the outside of the swim deck. The last thing I want is for someone to walk around the back of the boat and cut their leg on one of these things that's so sharp and nasty. I just used my angle grinder with a flapper bit and rounded it down and made it better. I followed that by putting the C-deck on top of the little L bracket and routing around it so it looks nice. Good look at the C-deck. Here I am clamping the L brackets to the outside of the swim deck, and then I go inside the boat to mark the back of the L brackets through the existing holes. I drill the holes in the L brackets, and now I have all the pieces in place to 5200 these things onto the back of the boat. I'm definitely feeling the pressure here. It's put up or shut up. Can I do this? Can I mount it? Is it going to work? The answer is yes, but at the time, I didn't know. In any case, I needed to clean out the debris from the mount holes so that I could get a watertight seal with my 5200 caulk. My transom is over an inch thick at the narrowest, and cleaning out 12 holes until no more dust or debris came out took a long time. I also did some surface scuff sanding here and then cleaning of that afterwards, but it's hard to tell in this video where I was actually doing that. Once the drop cloth comes out, I'm getting ready to do the actual mounting of the brackets. I used a brand new tube, a 5200 quick set epoxy, and gobbed it into each bracket. Then stuck them to the back of the boat, holding them in place with their mounting bolts. Then things got really crazy. I asked Amanda to come out and crank the bolts while I was inside the boat putting the washers and nylock nuts on. We needed to communicate which bolt we were on and what direction to move for the next bolt. As if doing a project with your spouse like this isn't stressful enough, the boys were not interested in watching TV, and both of them came out into the garage because both mom and dad were in the garage, and the big moment of mounting the swim deck was a family affair. This gives you a good look at all the 5200. I made sure I really gobbed it on there. I got a nice bead all the way around these. Makes me feel good that I got a nice seal on it. I came out and tried messing with it, tried smoothing out the 5200. That was a mistake. Kind of made a mess. See, it was messy on top here. Should have just gone with the bead look right there. 3 days later, I got around to properly oiling the swim deck. Ron Tanis uses a home concoction of 1-to-1 linseed oil and transmission fluid. Yep. It sounds crazy, but in Ron Tanis I trust, so of course I did it. And as usual, he's right. It looks amazing. Here I am mixing the secret sauce, transmission fluid, and linseed oil. I used a foam brush to apply. At this point, for all intents and purposes, I am done with the swim deck. It comes on and off the boat easily, and parking in the garage is easy because of it. Over the next 2 months of boat use, the color did fade quite a bit. I only did one coat on the first round and have decided to recoat with linseed oil and transmission fluid. I gotta move you a little bit here. We're gonna be way too close here. Maybe this is a subtle dad improvement, but now Bryce does an art project with me while I'm doing an art project. Oh, what? Oh no. I missed a spot. So I just finished my transmission and linseed oil treatment. It went pretty much horribly, as bad as it could go. I realized halfway through that I wasn't gonna be able to flip it. The only way to get it to stand on the feet was to turn the table this way. So when I turned the table, I spilled my mixture there, so then I had to pick up mixture off the floor. I had a clean tarp here. Well, it's a used tarp. I decided to dab it. I knew it would be kind of an issue. I do have some hairs all over the swim deck, so I'm gonna go upstairs. I'm gonna get the oldest pair of underwear I can find, and I'm gonna rag it off with those and try and get all the bits and dust off the top and make it look good. Came out great. It's gonna look great. The color's fantastic. I'm just gonna have this beautiful swim deck. Glow shot. There it is.